Touch is memory, said the poet John Keats, and that rings true for many undergoing self-isolation, for whom this kind of intimacy is indeed a memory. Human contact, heightened and made dramatic in dance, is so much a part of our nature. The human touch makes everyone seem a little bit more, well, human. The old-style diplomatic meet and greet, as when Theresa May lent a helping hand to President Trump, was sealed with the pressing of political flesh. The touchy-feely Teletubbies aren't perhaps for everyone, but their antics appeal to infants who develop touch before their other senses. And touch has been linked with several health benefits, including enhanced immunity. In a strangely prescient experiment published in 2015, 400 people in the US were quarantined and exposed to the common cold virus. Those who'd enjoyed regular hugs before lockdown showed fewer signs of illness and recovered faster than those who hadn't. But that was the common cold, not coronavirus. While those at home in lockdown often miss the human touch, it's proved a vital lifeline for patients in intensive care, thanks to their nurses.
You know, we're always with them, they're never alone. There's always a nurse holding their hand, and we do the best we can.
Some of those thoughts on touch from Steve Smith. Well, joining us now, Liz Hoggard, who's written movingly about what the absence of touch has meant for her, and Terry Waite, former hostage in Beirut, is now isolating alone in, I think, Suffolk, is it? Very nice of you to join us, both of you. Liz, if I can start with you. It was Christmas, was it, when you last hugged your family? I wonder, has that lack of touch been harder than you imagined?
Yes, I think it's really interesting. And when I wrote the piece, I mean, I was talking about familial romantic touch as well, but I think it's the normal casual social touch that we miss. You know, the sort of, when you're out for a night with friends, the sort of pat on the knee or the sort of hand on the shoulder. It feels like we're in this strange dystopian world, like something out of Margaret Atwood or J.G. Ballard. But I found when I wrote the piece that people responded really, really warmly and poignantly. And some said, you know, welcome to my world, because loneliness is a big problem. And I think it's given me a lot of empathy for what it feels like.
What have you replaced that with? Without that sort of, I think, what you call neutral touch, whether it was manicures or massage or, you know, somebody just guiding your arm. What have you found that's replaced that?
Yeah, I mean, normally if you're lovelorn or a bit bereft, you know, you can go and have a massage, and that neutral social touch is a very good thing. But I think what I've really noticed is it's sensuality that you miss. So I found that I've draped over fabrics a bit, or, you know, the velvety fur of the cats, and also just rushing out into the garden to see if the bulbs have grown, because the news is very dark in the evenings. It seems really important the natural life cycle's going on.
Terry, I read that you were quite enjoying your solitary isolation at the moment, short term as it now is. Is that right?
It is, and I find it actually a rather welcome break from having to rush around to meet engagements all the time. But I think in part, obviously, one doesn't enjoy it from the point of view that recognising there are many, many people who are finding it exceptionally difficult and exceptionally lonely and very stressful. But that's not something I particularly feel myself at the moment.
If I take you back, during that 5 years of imprisonment, was lack of touch something that you felt profoundly then? I mean, there were huge physical discomforts in what you were going through as a hostage, but do you remember sort of recognising that lack of touch as being something that you missed?
Well, there are two things about that. In the first instance, I was rather glad initially not to be touched, because when I was simply knocked around. And so it was a rather blessing for the first few years not to be touched at all. But then in the latter few weeks of captivity, having spent almost 5 years alone, I was moved in to be with other hostages, and I was quite ill at the time, and I couldn't lie down. I had to sit with my back against the wall day and night, sitting on the floor, of course. And the American hostage, Terry Anderson, was not far away. He was chained up as I was chained up. We were all chained up. And at night, when I was struggling for breath, Terry leaned across and he just put his hand on mine. He didn't say a word, just put his hand on mine. And that, I can tell you, made a tremendous difference. I'd often visited people, you know, in hospital and wondered what to say. And I realised it wasn't so much what you say, it's the fact of the presence of another human being. Now, I had no other human beings for almost 5 years, apart from guards who I never saw because I was blindfolded. And so I had to learn how to, one might say, make friends with myself, be content with getting to know myself better and getting to understand myself better. And that process did take place.
Extraordinary to hear that. And Liz, when you hear Terry Waite explaining how that lack of touch was both a relief at first and possibly a very physical help latterly, do you think now, has it made you more wary of people or desperate to get back to that physical contact when we can imagine coming out of lockdown?
Yes, I think it's made me really keen to, you know, just that high that you feel at the end of an evening with your friends where you're on top of the world and you want to connect with them. I mean, I'm quite bad at social kissing. I'm not a naturally extrovert person in that sense, but I have really missed it. And also I hate the fact that when we go outdoors now, on the rare occasions we do, we have to be so hypervigilant, you know, constantly where our bodies are, where everybody else's body, don't get too close to me. And that feels very anti-life and quite painful. And I mean, obviously what Terry's talking about, you know, having been in solitary confinement for 4 years is not comparable to what we're going through. But I do think it's taught me a big lesson about how important those things are. And, you know, to build more of it into my life, really, it's far more important than a lot of the other material things that we all worry about.
Briefly, is there one person that you are looking forward to hugging or touching or reaching out to? Or is it just a general sense of a sort of tactile sense now for you?
I think it's a collegiate sense. You know, this is my friends, my generation. You know, our project at the moment is to stay alive, quite frankly. But, you know, it's very minor for us. I mean, we're not on the front line. We're very privileged lives in lots of ways. But I will never take my friends for granted in the same way. And even though we do Zoom and Skype and all those things, your brain can't quite work out why they're not in the room with you. You know, you have a headache by the end of the evening. Yeah. So I think it's really changed me.
Thank you both very much. It's been extraordinary to hear your experiences. Thanks for sharing them.
Thank you.